Good evening. Welcome to the second speaker forum. This is part of our 2030 plan update for the Fargo Comprehensive Plan. I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting. We're very excited to have Jack Becker with us this evening. He's the Executive Director of the Forecast Public Art Advance and Strengthening the Field of Public Art. And I'll let Jack maybe explain a little more about that, but he is a very dynamic speaker. He actually has worked hard serving as a public art consultant since 1994, helped in connecting ideas and energies of artists with the needs of the community. So we're very excited to have him talk a little bit about his background and maybe how that can apply to the comprehensive plan for the city of Fargo. In 2007, he received a Public Art Network Award of Excellence from the Americans for the Arts for his contribution to the field. And so with that, I want to give a strong welcome to Mr. Jack Becker.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here. And it's always great to be part of any conversation that's looking ahead as far as Fargo is. And to have public art be part of that conversation, this is a great opportunity for me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and how I got involved in this field and help you define public art, because I always get asked that question, what is public art? And that's a good one. We could spend an hour just talking about that, or even worse, what is good public art? That gets even more complicated. I'm an artist. I graduated from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design back in 1976, and of course thought it's just a matter of time before I get out, and the Walker Art Center calls me up and I'll get a show, and then, that's how you do your career. And, I sat around for just a little while, and they didn't call. But fortunately for me, and I bring this up because I think it was just a watershed year, in 1977, during the Carter administration, there was a program, a federal jobs training program. I could tell some people are over 50 here because they're going like this. It was called the CETA program, Comprehensive Employment Training Act, that put artists to work around the country in the community and paid them for a year to work both in their studios and in the community. And in Minneapolis, the program was called City Art Productions, and it put 60 artists to work. And I was one of them. I was very fortunate. And they showed me my office. This was a desk and a phone at City Hall at the Minneapolis Arts Commission, and they gave me a job title, Gallery Director, and I felt completely unprepared for this. I've never been a gallery director. And they said, there is one catch, there is no gallery. And I said, okay, what's the deal? They said, the city is your gallery, and your job is to organize exhibitions of the other 60 CETA artists at the government center, at the libraries, at parks and plazas, performances on the bus. In other words, think about the entire city as your gallery. You're in charge. Here's your desk and phone. Now go for it. And seriously, it was an eye-opening experience. It was like a graduate education for me, and it was a very empowering experience. Listen, I tried making things happen by calling people from my studio, and they weren't even returning my calls. But if you tell them you're calling from City Hall, they'll call you back, you might get somewhere. And I tell artists to do that every once in a while when I do workshops, and they'll never check up on you. So that one-year program, I found out that really what I was doing was making connections. The artists in the program, artists in the city with public spaces, and people with businesses, and people with materials that would be willing to donate. And I was just basically doing computer dating. Maybe you want to meet so-and-so over here. Maybe you're interested in reaching this audience with your creativity. I wasn't so much a curator as a facilitator and a connector. And in some ways, it wasn't unlike the found object sculpture I was doing in the studio, okay, where you're just taking the raw material that's around you and putting it together to make something new happen. And it's being able to look at those materials and see what the possibilities are and be able to connect them and realize something new can happen all by itself. And people got excited. The idea that we wanted to put on a sculpture exhibition in a city park, well, that took the parks people by surprise. took them out of their normal day-to-day. What can we do to help? What are the issues? Well, we don't really have a permit for public art, but if you fill out this picnic permit, that'll suffice. As long as you clean up after yourself, they said that. And you know what? I still think the picnic permit is the right model there. But business owners having conversations with artists that they otherwise wouldn't have, and me being the prompter of those conversations led to a lifelong career. And the year after the CETA program ended, I came upon a space in the Warehouse District of Minneapolis and realized this would be a perfect opportunity for artists to use as a venue for putting on their shows, events, having activities that otherwise wouldn't happen, non-commercial. This wasn't about artists selling their art in the marketplace. This was about what do you want to say to the audience with your creativity. And so Forecast started as a nonprofit organization with an alternative space in the Warehouse District, and after about 10 months, we realized all the money we were raising was going into rent and overhead, and what we really wanted to do was put the money in the hands of artists and give them the right to go out and reach communities with their creativity, as opposed to us commissioning them and saying, we want you to do art here, we want you to do art there. It's about asking artists, if you could take your creativity anywhere in the community and reach any audience you want to reach with your ideas and what's important to you, where would you go? What would you do? Here's some money. Here's some technical assistance. Here's some documentation. Here's some insurance to help you. And what would you do? And I put that to you as well. And I would say if one thing holds true in your plan in the future is any way you can find to support artists going out and working in their community, not unlike what the CETA program did for me in 1977, you will reap the rewards for many years to come. So Forecast started this trajectory of public art and advancing and strengthening the field of public art through supporting artists, informing audiences, engaging communities. Those are really the tenets of everything that we do. And I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of an overview of what's going on in this field of public art today. And then I'd really like to have a dialogue with you and hear what your thoughts are and maybe help you shape some concepts you can carry forward into your plan. So let's see if I can get the next slide on. Here we go. So right now, public art in America is pretty much made up of percent for art programs at city, county, and state level. And there's over 350 programs around the country. And as you can see, a lot of them are concentrated on the coast and scattered throughout the Midwest. But what this map doesn't show is programs that happen on college campuses or nonprofit organizations like Forecast. And I would argue that the model of percent for art is perhaps getting outmoded. And if you want to look ahead 20 years or so, you need to start thinking about a more open-ended model that isn't tied to just art as a percent of your capital budget and fixed to bricks and mortar building projects, or just limited to the commissioning of artists for projects that you want artists to do. But as I said before, find ways to support artists working in public and see where they take it. So our mission, as I mentioned, is to strengthen and advance the field of public art locally, nationally, and internationally. And one of the ways we do that is with a semi-annual publication called Public Art Review, which I brought a few copies you're welcome to look through. This is the only magazine devoted to public art in the country and one of the few in the world. There are a couple of academic journals on the horizon, but this is trying to make information and ideas about public art accessible to a broad readership. After all, public art is free, so information about public art, I believe, should be freely accessible. In other words, it's not art speak, and it's not high academic writing, although some of it's quite challenging. What we're trying to do with this publication is help the broad audience for public art to understand what is really going on. There are stories behind every project, and this is sort of the central clearinghouse of the stories around contemporary public art. And we pick a theme for each issue and then wrap the stories around that, and we really intended it as an educational tool. And how can teachers use public art review to help teach this subject in schools, starting with K through 12 and all the way through postgraduate. I'm very excited to announce tonight that through an NEA grant, we've been able to partner with the University of Minnesota Libraries to digitize and archive all the content of the past 23 years of public art review and share it online for free with the world. What this means is we're not going to make any money off of public art review, but what we hope is some of the advertisers that help support our magazine will help support the online companion, and we'll figure out a way to monetize it as we go along, because we really believe that this content is important to share with a very, very broad audience, and we can only afford to print so many. We're not giving up the print version, but we are going to create an online companion to go along with this publication. For the last 15 years, because we have been in this field for a while and so many people have called upon us to help them find artists, to develop plans, to give talks, to do workshops with artists, we've developed a consulting service through Forecast. It's actually a viable earned income program. And if you're a small nonprofit, mainly dependent on contributions, I can tell you earned income is the gold standard. And it's something that if the demand is there, you can charge a decent rate for your service. We get hired by clients who are looking for artists, and artists get jobs as well through our consulting. So it's a win-win-win deal. We have an artist services program that's about 23 years old now. It gives grants to artists in Minnesota, primarily through Jerome Foundation, but more recently with the Legacy Amendment that was passed by the voters in Minnesota. We now have additional funding through the regional arts councils and do region-specific grants for artists that want to do projects, both research and development of public art projects, as well as modest-scale demonstration projects. And something else that just came up very recently with help from the McKnight Foundation, which has been a longtime funder of us at Forecast, we now have, and we'll start up in 2012, a mid-career public art grant program. So for the past 23 years, it's been focusing on incubating emerging artists, which again is, I think, critical. How do you get into this field if you've never done a project? And so our grant program has been focused on emerging artists. And now we are going to have a new grant program that's geared toward mid-career artists, and for the first time ever, a $50,000 grant for an artist to do a project anywhere in the state of Minnesota, sites of their choosing at any time throughout the coming year. So stay tuned for more information about that. And with the legacy money as well, we've been able to do more workshops and travel around the state, meet with artists, and we're now developing an online public art toolkit, as well as some curriculum materials for K through 12. And what we're really looking at is web-based resources for the public art field, both in the print version of the magazine going online, as well as our artist services. What have we learned over our 33 years? How can we put that into some kind of toolkit that can be shared with communities around the state and around the country? And of course, it has case studies and glossary of terms and sample contracts and